A nice question, more on the lines of a puzzle. It was asked very recently in a forum, so I thought to do a video on it. It's a tough one. In a pasture, grass grows at a uniform rate per day. If 40 goats graze, the grass is exhausted in 6 days. If 20 goats graze, the grass is exhausted in 16 days. How many goats grazing will exhaust the pasture in pasture? Will exhaust the pasture in 12 days. Now in questions where we have certain food, we have certain number of feeders, those who eat on this, and we have days the food will last. What happens typically is more the number of feeders, the days last would be less, right? And hence they look at inversely proportional. What we need to understand in this situation is, this is when the food amount is a constant. Right? So if I analyze this situation, what I see is, if I look at the number of goats have changed from 40 to 20. So they have half. If they have half, what should have happened is the number of days should have doubled. Right? So earlier how many days it was? 6. So 6 should have become 12. But what I see in the data given is, it's not 12, it is more than 12. More than 12, it is 16, right? And why is this happening? Because here the food amount is not constant. The grass is growing at a uniform rate per day. So let's see the chain of thing. Lesser goats, right, will lead to, obviously this relation will be the backbone of it, will lead to more days. However, they are not inversely proportional. Implies that the product has to be a constant. Yeah, if one varies, if one becomes half, the other should become double, right? There's a numeric value also involved. Here I'm just saying that days will go up, days will go up more, but not proportionally. Lesser goats, I'll get more days, and since I have more days, in the more days, this will result into more grass growing. More grass growing. That is what I said is this question is different about. The grass grows, and more grass growing results in more food, and if there is more food, that will last for more days, right? So there is a sort of let's say cumulative effect of it, and I would get still more days. So instead of 12, I'll get more higher days, right? So how do we solve these questions? Let's have a look. We'll look at the traditional way first, and then we'll look at the shortcut. Let's start by defining the variables, constants that will be used. So let's say one goat eats, instead of graze, let me just use eats A units per day. And grass is growing, so let's say grass grows at the rate of B units per day, right? It is per day rate. And obviously the goats eating will be at a faster rate than the growing, or else the grass will keep growing if it is faster, and the goats will not be able to exhaust, right? But since it gets exhausted, A is going to be greater than B. So that means initially the pasture is not barren. If initially the pasture was barren, any grass which is going to be grown is going to be eaten away, right? So it would not last any while. So we need to understand that there needs to be a third variable also, the initial amount of grass, and let's say that is C units. So these are the variables, are the constants? We'll look in a while, right? And how do I solve the question? Obviously the grass eaten has to be equal to the grass available, because the pasture has to be exhausted. And how much grass is eaten? Let's start. A units, one goat eats. How many goats do I have? 40 goats I have. How many? This is for per day. And how many days is it? 6 days. How much is the grass available? There was at start there was C units, and grass grows at the rate of B units in 1 day. How many days? 6 days. So this, when I do it, will become nothing but 240A is equal to C plus 6B. Let's take the second scenario. One goat eats A. 20 goats will eat 20A in one day. It lasts for 16 days. So that is 16 grass available. C, B units per day. How many days? 16 days it is growing. And when I multiply 16 twos are, this is 320A is equal to C plus 16B. Now for those who are good in maths or fast in maths would realize that there are three variables, but there are only two equations. So obviously we cannot find each individually, but again who is adept in maths will know that we can still write all of them in terms of one. There are going to be infinite solutions to them. So let's just subtract. Even if you don't know, you could see that C is same. This should appear very familiar. So if I subtract it, I am doing the second minus the first, and 320 minus 240, 80A is equal to 10B, which results into B is equal to 8A. And if I substitute the B is equal to 8A in any of them, let me substitute it in the first, the values are smaller. 8 6 are 48A. The 48A will come to the other side, will be subtracted. 40 goes off, another 8 goes off. So I'll be getting C is equal to 192A. So what we achieved by this is, we wrote all the A, B, C in terms of A. B is 8A, C is 192A, A is A itself, right? So we'll write the equation in terms of A. Now to get to our answer. So the question is how many goats? So I do not know the number of goats. So let me start. So A is the same equation. I need to write it for the third relation. A into the number of goats I do not know. You want to use a variable, use it. I am comfortable using a question mark itself. This is what I want to find. How many days? Say 12 days, right? Okay, it is asking us for 12 days. Is equal to C, and what is C? C is nothing but 192A plus B. B is nothing but 8A. 8A, how many days? 12 days. And what we see is there's an A in all three terms. So the A cancels out and no other variable is left out. So I can find my question mark. Right? So the number of goats will be, when I divide by 12, I don't even need to do this multiplication, just divide by 12. 12 ones are 12, 72 will be 6. When I divide by 12, I'll get 8. So 24 goats is my answer. Right? A pretty elaborate one, right? And I would always ask you to do this pencil work before you do any shortcut. Or else shortcuts are just going to be, a memory tool, a tool which you have memorized. You would not know how. Small changes can still be done in this and the shortcut may be worthless, right? So you need to know this process. And obviously explaining takes a lot more time. If you are fast, you can do it pretty soon. You obviously don't need to write these terms. Let's look at the shortcut now. If you focus on these two equations, I can take the A to the other side, and so I'll just do it in the short, B by A. Here also A, I take it to the other side. You don't need to worry. Yeah, it's getting a little untidy, but you don't have to worry. So this is a C by A, C by A, B by A, B by A. There's a 240, there's a 6, 320, 16. If you notice this A, B, C, they are actually constants. The rate at which you consume, grows, what is the initial quantity, all are fixed in nature. So the C by A, B by A both become sort of constants. And what is it that is varying in this question? Where is the variation involved? The variation is involved into number of feeders and number of days. That is, this 240 is varying and the 6 is varying. 320, 240 becomes 320, 6 becomes 16, right? So I can write this relation sort of y1 is equal to some constant plus another constant b by a into x1. And here I have y2 is equal to same constant, another one, but same as the previous, into x2. And now this should be absolutely familiar if you have reached this far as to solve this question. Right? This trait tells me that y and x are directly related. They are not directly proportional. There is a fixed part and a part of it varies directly. We call it typically direct relation. And in such direct relation, there is a very easy shortcut. What is that? the change in y, when I subtracted, let's say y2 minus y1 or y1 minus y2, the change in y, the k1 gets cancelled out, I have k2 times the change in x, and this simply says change in y is directly proportional to change in x. This is the shortcut. What remains to be seen is what is this y and what is this x? Are they simply goats and days? Not really. X, yes, x is nothing but the number of days, right? But what is y? If you look, how did I get this 240? How did I get this 320? I got it as the product of goat into days. So what I can say is goat into days is directly related to days, which means the change in goat into days is directly proportional to the change in days. Now the shortcut is pretty obvious. So I need to talk about goat days. I need to talk about days. And let's go ahead. First time goat days, 40 into 6, 240 goat days. Days is nothing but 6 days. Second case, now you will see why I say do it with pencil work, because what you are doing here in the shortcut is identical to what you were doing in the equations. It's just that you are not writing you are writing a bare bone structure. You are not writing what is not needed. 20 goats into 16, that is going to be 320 goat days. Days lasted will be 6, and let me write the question also. If days lasted need to be 12, what is the number of goat days? And I know that change in goat days is directly proportional to change, so I take the change. Oh, so from 240 to 320 is 80 a increase. Here the increase, so I am going this way, is nothing but a 10. So 10 and 80 has a direct relation. Oh, so this is 18, 10 into 8 is 80. Pretty easy. Which one? I do not know this. So let me start over here. 16 has become a 12. That's a minus 4. So here I would be having a minus 32. 4 into 8. This is where I use the direct proportion. 1:8 is the ratio. Anyway, let's finish it off. It's getting long. 320 minus 32. 20 gone, another 12 to go. 288 is the number of goat days. And the number of goat days, I know days is equal to 12. So when I divide it, I would be getting 12 2s are 24 and 24. 24 goats is my answer. If you do not like to write any of this pencil work, this is how you do it. I'll just leave you with a caveat. I'll write a blog post on this. You'll have 2 questions to practice this on, one pretty identical, and the caveat is, instead of this, if I would have given you that there were 24 goats, how many days would they need? It would get a little tricky over here, but I leave that for you to decide. I've already given you the shortcut, right? So you might need a pencil work in the last bit, but that's for you to do. Thank you.